The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest building in the known universe. It floated in space, far from any planet. A massive structure made of white metal and blue glass. Inside, thousands of seats rose up in circles around a central platform. Each seat belonged to a different species from a different world. They had gathered here for 3,000 years to make laws, settle fights, and decide the future of all living things in the galaxy. On this day, the hall was full. Creatures of all shapes and sizes filled the seats. Some had scales, some had fur. Some had no bodies at all, and floated as clouds of light. They spoke in clicks, whistles, and sounds that human ears could not hear. But the translation machines turned everything into words that everyone could understand. In one small section, near the back of the hall, sat the human delegation. There were only 12 of them. Their seats were old and worn. The lights above them flickered. This was where the Galactic Council had placed humanity 300 years ago. When Earth first made contact with the stars, it was a message. Humans were new. Humans were young. Humans did not matter. Ambassador Daniel Wright sat in the front row of the human section. He was a tall man, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had served Earth for 30 years, first as a soldier, then as a diplomat. He had learned to smile when aliens insulted him. He had learned to nod when they told him that humans were too primitive to understand complex matters. He had learned to swallow his pride and think of the bigger picture. But today, something inside him had changed. The Valoran High Chancellor stood on the central platform. The Valorans were tall beings with pale blue skin and 4 arms. They considered themselves the most advanced species in the galaxy. They had been part of the Council since the beginning, and they never let anyone forget it. "We have reviewed the human expansion request," the High Chancellor said. His voice was cold and flat. "After careful study, we have decided to deny it. Furthermore, we are placing new limits on human territory. From this day forward, humans will be allowed to hold no more than 12 star systems." A murmur went through the hall. Some aliens nodded in approval. Others made sounds of amusement. The Crix delegation, insect-like creatures with hard shells and sharp claws, clicked their mandibles in what passed for laughter among their kind. Daniel felt his hands tighten into fists. 12 systems. The Valorans controlled 8,000. The Crix had 3,000. Even the Morvathi, who spent most of their time in deep meditation, had 500 worlds. But humanity, with its 10 billion people spread across the stars, would be limited to 12. This decision is based on security concerns, the High Chancellor continued. Humans have shown themselves to be aggressive and unpredictable. They breed too fast. They expand too quickly. They do not respect the old ways. For the safety of all species, their growth must be controlled. The words hit Daniel like punches. He had heard such things before, whispered in hallways, and muttered at diplomatic dinners, but never so openly, never with such confidence. The Council was not even pretending to treat humans fairly anymore. He looked down at his datapad. A message was waiting from Secretary General Mary Sullivan back on Earth. She was the leader of the United Earth government, a woman of 60, with iron gray hair and a will to match. The message was short. Just 3 words. "Do it now." Daniel stood up. The movement was so sudden that the aliens near him flinched. Humans were not supposed to stand during council sessions. Humans were supposed to sit quietly and accept whatever decisions were made for them. "The chair recognizes the human ambassador," said the council speaker, a floating ball of light that served as the official moderator. Its voice was surprised. Humans almost never spoke in the Great Hall. Daniel walked down the steps toward the central platform. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. Every eye, every sensor, every form of alien perception turned toward him. He stopped at the edge of the platform and looked up at the High Chancellor. The Valoran stared down at him, with something between annoyance and amusement. "You wish to speak, human?" the High Chancellor asked. "You wish to beg for more time? More systems?" I am afraid the decision is final. Fine. Daniel shook his head. I am not here to beg. He turned to face the entire hall. Thousands of aliens watched him. Most of them had never paid attention to a human before. They saw only a small, fragile creature with soft skin and short life. They saw nothing worth fearing. They were wrong. For 300 years, Daniel said, humanity has been a member of this council. We have followed your rules. We have paid your taxes. We have fought in your wars. We have built your stations, healed your sick, and fed your hungry. We asked for nothing but respect. He paused, letting the words settle. Instead, you gave us contempt. You put us in the back of this hall. You denied our requests. You mocked our culture. You called us children, animals, primitives. And through it all, we smiled and hoped that one day, you would see us as equals. The High Chancellor made a dismissive gesture. If you have come to complain, human, save your breath. The Council has more important matters to discuss. Daniel smiled. It was not a friendly smile. I have not come to complain, he said. I have come to say goodbye. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metal badge. It was the symbol of Earth's membership in the Galactic Council. Every human ambassador had worn one for 3 centuries. Daniel dropped it on the floor. The United Earth government withdraws from the Galactic Council, he announced. Effective immediately, all treaties are ended, all trade agreements are cancelled, all defensive pacts are broken. Earth stands alone. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then the hall exploded into noise. Aliens shouted, screamed, and made sounds of shock. The Krix delegation laughed so hard that 2 of them fell off their seats. The Sindari ambassador, a creature of living crystal, made a rude gesture that roughly meant humans were crazy. The High Chancellor raised all 4 hands for silence. When the noise died down, he looked at Daniel with what might have been pity. You fool, he said. Do you understand what you have done? Without the Council's protection, your little worlds will be helpless. Without our trade, your economy will collapse. Without our technology, you will fall back into darkness. Daniel turned and began walking toward the exit. He did not look back. You will come crawling back within a year. The High Chancellor called after him. You will beg us to let you return. And when you do, we will not be so generous. Daniel stopped at the door. He turned his head just enough to speak over his shoulder. We shall see. Then he was gone. The hall buzzed with conversation. The aliens could not believe what had just happened. Some were angry. Some were amused. Some were simply confused. But not one of them was worried. Humans were weak. Humans were young. Humans did not matter. They would learn soon enough how wrong they were. Back on Earth, Mary Sullivan watched the broadcast with her cabinet. The room was silent as Daniel walked out of the Great Hall. When the feed ended, she stood up and looked at the men and women around her. It is done, she said. Defense Secretary Kevin Grant leaned forward. He was a large man with a thick beard and worried eyes. Are we sure about this? The Council has ships. They have weapons. If they decide to punish us, Mary shook her head. They will not attack. Not yet. They think we are foolish children throwing a tantrum. They expect us to come back with our heads down. And if they are right? Asked Finance Minister Linda Cole. She was a small woman, with sharp features and a sharper mind. Our economy depends on galactic trade. If they cut us off, then we will survive, Mary said firmly. Humans have survived ice ages, plagues, and wars. We will survive this too. She walked to the window and looked up at the night sky. Somewhere out there, the aliens were laughing at humanity. They thought they had nothing to fear. They had no idea what was coming. Begin the recall, Mary ordered. Every human engineer, every human doctor, every human worker on every alien world. Bring them home. The cabinet exchanged nervous looks. All of them? Kevin asked. All of them, Mary confirmed. Let the galaxy see what happens when humans stop working. She smiled, and it was the same smile that Daniel had worn in the Great Hall. They wanted to treat us like servants. Now they will learn what life is like without us. 3 weeks had passed since Earth left the Galactic Council. In that time, the aliens had done nothing but laugh. The news channels across 1,000 worlds made jokes about the foolish humans. Political leaders gave speeches about how Earth would soon come begging to return. Merchants raised their prices on human goods, expecting to make easy profits when the desperate humans came crawling back. But something strange was happening. On the trade world of Nexus Prime, a Crix merchant named Vrex was trying to send a message to his business partner on the other side of the galaxy. He pressed the buttons on his communication terminal, but nothing happened. The screen stayed dark. The signals did not go through. He called for a technician. The technician came, looked at the machine, and shook his head. The quantum relay is offline, the technician said. Well, fix it, Vrex demanded. The technician made a helpless gesture with his claws. I cannot. The system was built by humans. Only humans know how to repair it. Vrex felt a cold feeling in his stomach. Then, find a human. There are no humans on Nexus Prime anymore. They all left last week. Across the trading floor, other merchants were discovering the same problem. Screens went dark. Transactions failed. The great financial computers that tracked trillions of credits suddenly stopped working. Within hours, the entire economy of Nexus Prime had frozen, and it was only the beginning. On the Valoran homeworld, a planet of tall silver cities and endless gardens, the morning brought chaos. The water purification plants had stopped working. The systems that cleaned the air had shut down. The machines that grew food in the great underground farms were silent and still. High Chancellor Zorath received the reports in his private chamber. Each one was worse than the last. The humans designed all of these systems. His advisor Valix explained. When they joined the Council 300 years ago, they were eager to prove themselves useful. They offered to build things for us. They worked cheap. They worked fast. We let them handle the boring tasks while we focused on more important matters. And now? Zorath asked, his voice tight with anger. Now they are gone, and they took their knowledge with them. Zorath slammed his fist on the table. Then find other engineers. The Sindari are clever. The Morvathi are ancient and wise. Surely someone can figure out how these machines work. Valix shook his head slowly. We have tried. The systems are complex. They use methods that only humans understand. Our best scientists have studied them for days, and they cannot even find the power switch. The High Chancellor felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Fear. Far away, in the command center of Earth's military headquarters, Admiral Chris Lawson watched the reports come in. He was a man of 50, with short black hair and calm brown eyes. He had spent his whole life in the service of Earth, fighting battles that the galaxy never noticed, and winning wars that no one thanked him for. Now he was watching the galaxy fall apart, and he felt no guilt at all. Nexus Prime's economy is down 60%, reported Lieutenant Kate Morrison, a young woman with red hair and a quick mind. The Crix banking system collapsed this morning. 3 Sindari colonies have declared emergency states due to medicine shortages. What about the Valorans? Chris asked. Kate checked her screens. Their food production is failing. At current rates, they will face serious shortages within 2 months. Chris nodded slowly. And how are our people? All human workers have been evacuated from Council space. The last transport left Morvathi territory yesterday. Everyone is safe. Good. Chris leaned back in his chair. Continue monitoring. Do not respond to any requests for help. Kate hesitated. Sir, the Sindari have already sent 12 emergency messages. They say their hospitals are running out of medicine. People are dying. 2, 3. Chris felt a flicker of sympathy, but he pushed it away. The Sindari called us cockroaches at the last council meeting. They said humans were a disease that should be wiped out. Let them solve their own problems. The words were harsh, but Kate understood. She had read the reports of how humans were treated on alien worlds. The insults, the discrimination, the laws that kept humans out of good jobs and nice neighborhoods. For 300 years, humanity had swallowed its pride and tried to fit in. Those days were over. On the Crick's homeworld, a planet of vast deserts and underground cities, the situation was growing desperate. The Cricks were an insect-like species that depended on a special type of medicine to survive their harsh environment. Without it, their shells cracked and their bodies failed. For the last 200 years, humans had been making this medicine. They had improved the formula, increased production, and lowered the cost. The Cricks had taken it for granted. They had assumed the supply would never end. Now the supply had ended. Queen Chitara of the Cricks sat in her throne room, surrounded by advisors who had no advice to give. Reports came in every hour, each one bringing worse news. Hospitals were overflowing. The old and the young were dying first. Panic was spreading through the underground cities. "How long do we have?" the Queen asked. "At current rates, our medicine reserves will last 3 weeks," her chief minister replied. After that, he did not need to finish the sentence. "Contact the humans," the Queen ordered. "Offer them whatever they want. Gold, territory, technology, anything." The minister bowed low. "We have tried, Your Majesty. The humans do not respond. Their channels are closed to us." Chitara's mandibles clicked in frustration. She remembered how her predecessors had treated humans. They had called them soft, weak, and stupid. They had used human workers for the most dangerous jobs and paid them the lowest wages. They had laughed when humans asked for better treatment. Now the laughter had stopped. On a small space station near the border of human space, a meeting was taking place. Secretary General Mary Sullivan had traveled here in secret to speak with representatives from several alien species. They were not official diplomats. They were merchants, scientists, and workers who had dealt with humans and knew their true value. "The Council will never admit it," said a Sindari trader named Prism, her crystal body glowing softly in the dim room. "But they are terrified. I have never seen such panic among the ruling classes." Mary sipped her coffee calmly. "They should be. Every major system in the galaxy has human fingerprints on it. We built their world, piece by piece, while they looked the other way." A Morvathi elder, ancient and slow-moving, spoke next. "My people have lived for 1,000,000 years. We have seen empires rise and fall, but we have never seen anything like this. You humans are remarkable. We are survivors," Mary corrected. "That is all we have ever been. When the universe pushed us down, we found ways to make ourselves useful. We made ourselves necessary. And now the universe is learning what happens when you take us for granted." The Morvathi nodded slowly. "What do you want? Power? Revenge? Control of the council?" Mary set down her cup and looked at each alien in turn. "We want what we have always wanted. Respect, equality, a fair chance to grow and thrive. We never asked to rule the galaxy. We only asked to be treated like we mattered." The room was silent for a moment. "The council will never agree," Prism said sadly. "They are too proud, too old in their ways." Mary smiled. "Then the council will have to change, or it will die." She stood up and straightened her jacket. "Tell your people that humanity is not coming back to beg. We are not weak, and we are not afraid. If the galaxy wants our help, it will have to earn it." She walked out of the room, leaving the aliens to stare at each other in wonder. Back on Earth, the people were watching the galaxy burn. News channels showed the chaos on distant worlds. Markets crashing. Systems failing. Aliens who had once mocked humanity now scrambling to survive. Some humans felt satisfaction. After centuries of insults, it was good to see the proud aliens humbled. Others felt pity. The common people on those worlds had done nothing wrong. They were suffering because of the choices their leaders had made. But everyone agreed on one thing. There was no going back. Humanity had shown its true strength. Not in weapons or ships, but in knowledge and skill. They had built the galaxy's foundation, and now they had pulled it out from under their enemies. The universe would never look at humans the same way again. And somewhere, in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, the High Chancellor was finally beginning to understand the terrible mistake he had made. 2 months had passed since Earth left the Galactic Council. What had started as a joke had become a nightmare. The galaxy was falling apart, and no one knew how to stop it. High Chancellor Zorath stood at the window of his office, looking out at the silver towers of the Velaran capital city. The streets below were quiet. Too quiet. The machines that cleaned the air had failed last week. Now a brown haze hung over everything, and the people stayed inside, afraid to breathe. His advisor, Valix, entered the room with another stack of reports. Zorath did not turn around. "Tell me," he said. Valix cleared his throat nervously. "The galactic economy has fallen by 40%. The Krix banking system is gone. The Sindari are facing medicine shortages on all their worlds. The Morvathi, who have not known hunger in 10,000 years, are rationing food for the first time in their history." Zorath closed his eyes. "And our own people? The food synthesis network has failed completely. We are surviving on emergency reserves, but they will not last forever. The people are angry, Chancellor. They are asking questions." "What kind of questions?" "They want to know why we let this happen. They want to know why we depended on humans for everything. They want to know why we treated them so badly when we needed them so much." Zorath turned to face his advisor. For the first time in his long life, he looked old. "I thought humans were simple creatures. Useful, but not important. They seemed happy to do the work we gave them. They never complained. They never fought back. They were playing a long game," Valix said quietly. "They made themselves necessary while we were not paying attention. And when we pushed them too far, they simply walked away." "We did not push them," Zorath protested. "We only placed reasonable limits on their expansion. We told them they could only have 12 worlds while we had thousands. We called them dangerous and unpredictable. We treated them like prisoners in their own homes." Valix shook his head. "We did not see them as equals, and now they have proven that they are more than our equals." Zorath sat down heavily in his chair. He had ruled the Velaran Empire for 100 years. He had fought wars, made treaties, and shaped the destiny of billions. But he had never faced a challenge like this. "Call an emergency session of the Council," he ordered. "We must find a solution." The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was almost empty when the meeting began. Many species had stopped sending representatives. Some were too busy dealing with their own crises. Others had lost faith in the Council's ability to solve anything. Those who did attend looked tired and scared. The Krix delegation had shrunk from 20 members to 5. The Sindari ambassador's crystal body had lost its glow. Even the Morvathi elder, who had lived for 1,000,000 years, seemed worn and old. Zorath stood at the central platform and looked at the sad gathering around him. "We all know why we are here," he began. "The galaxy is in crisis. Our systems are failing. Our people are suffering. And the cause is clear. The humans have left us, and we cannot survive without them." A Krix representative clicked his mandibles angrily. "Then force them to come back. Send ships to Earth. Make them fix what they broke." "We cannot," said the Morvathi elder. His voice was slow and heavy. "The humans have not broken anything. They simply stopped helping us. We have no legal right to force them to work for us." "Then threaten them," the Krix insisted. "Show them our weapons. Make them fear us." Zorath shook his head. "Our weapons are useless. The targeting systems were designed by humans. The engines were built by humans. Half our fleet cannot even leave port because the navigation computers have stopped working. Silence fell over the hall. The truth was becoming clear to everyone. The galaxy had depended on humans for everything, and no one had noticed until it was too late. The Sindari ambassador spoke next. Her voice was like breaking glass. How did we not see this? How did we become so blind? Because we did not want to see, said a new voice. Everyone turned. Standing at the entrance to the hall was an old Morvathi named Sarath. He had been a junior diplomat 300 years ago, when humans first joined the council. Now he was ancient, even by Morvathi standards, and he walked with the help of a floating support device. I was there when the humans arrived, Sarath said as he slowly made his way to the platform. I saw their first ambassadors, young and eager and full of hope. They wanted so badly to be accepted. They wanted to prove that they belonged among the stars. He reached the platform and turned to face the council. And what did we do? We laughed at them. We called them children. We gave them the worst seats in this hall, and the smallest share of every resource. When they complained, we told them to be patient. When they asked for respect, we told them to earn it. Sarath's old eyes moved from face to face. But they did earn it. They worked harder than any species in the galaxy. They learned our languages, studied our cultures, and found ways to make themselves useful. They built our communications networks, improved our medicine, and fed our populations. They did everything we asked, and more. Then why did they leave? The Krix representative demanded. Because we never stopped treating them like servants, Sarath replied. We took their work for granted. We accepted their gifts, and gave nothing in return. And when they finally asked for what they deserved, we told them, no. He pointed at Zorath with a trembling hand. You told them they were too dangerous to be trusted with more than 12 worlds. You, who control 8,000 systems and still hunger for more. You looked at the species that had built your civilization, and told them they were not worthy of growth. Zorath's face flushed with shame and anger. I was trying to protect the galaxy. Humans spread too quickly. They take too much. They take only what they need, Sarath corrected. And they give far more than they receive. Look around you, Chancellor. Look at what the galaxy has become without them. Is this the protection you wanted? No one spoke. The truth hung in the air, like smoke. Finally, the Morvathi elder rose from his seat. We must bring them back. Whatever it costs, whatever it takes. We must convince the humans to return. They will not return as members of this council, Sarath warned. They will not accept being treated as lesser beings again. If they return at all, they will return as leaders. Then let them lead. The Sindari ambassador said, her crystal voice cracking with desperation. Let them rule. If that is what they want, anything is better than this. Zorath felt the weight of every eye in the hall pressing down on him. He had spent his whole life believing that Valorans were the greatest species in the galaxy. He had never imagined that the future might belong to soft, short-lived humans, but the evidence was undeniable. The galaxy was dying, and only humans could save it. Very well, he said, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. We will send a delegation to Earth. We will offer them whatever they want. It may not be enough, Sarath warned. You broke their trust. You humiliated them in front of the entire galaxy. They may not be willing to forgive. Then we will beg, Zorath said. We will crawl on our bellies if we must. But we will not let our people die because of our pride. He looked around the hall one last time. This council was built on the idea that older species knew better than younger ones. That wisdom came with age, and power came with history. But we were wrong. The humans have taught us that strength comes from work, from cleverness, from the refusal to give up. They have been among us for only 300 years, and already they have surpassed us all. He straightened his back and spoke with the last of his dignity. Prepare the delegation. We leave for Earth tomorrow. As the council members filed out of the hall, Sarath remained behind. He looked up at the empty seats, remembering the eager young humans who had once sat there, hoping for acceptance. "You deserved better," he said to the empty room. "And now, finally, you will have it." Whether the galaxy was ready or not, a new age was beginning, and humans would be at its center. The alien delegation arrived on Earth on a cold morning in December. Their ship, once the pride of the Valoran fleet, landed at a small airport outside Geneva, Switzerland. It was not the grand welcome they had expected. There were no crowds, no ceremonies, no flags or music, just a few security officers and a single black car waiting to take them to the meeting. High Chancellor Zoreth stepped off the ship and felt the cold wind on his face. He had visited thousands of worlds in his long life, but this was his first time on Earth. The sky was gray, and snow was beginning to fall. It seemed fitting somehow. The galaxy was entering its own winter, and humans held the only warmth. The Sindari ambassador, whose name was Crystal Voice, walked beside him. Her body had lost much of its glow during the crisis, and she moved slowly and carefully. Behind them came representatives from the Krix, the Morvathi, and 5 other major species. They were the most powerful beings in the galaxy, reduced to begging at the doorstep of those they had once mocked. The car took them through the streets of Geneva. Zoreth watched the humans going about their daily lives. They walked to work, drank coffee at small cafes, and played with their children in the parks. They seemed so normal, so ordinary. It was hard to believe that these simple creatures had brought the galaxy to its knees. The meeting was held in a small conference room in an old building near the lake. The room had plain white walls, a wooden table, and simple chairs. There was a coffee machine in the corner and a window that looked out at the gray winter sky. It was nothing like the grand halls of the Galactic Council. Secretary General Mary Sullivan was waiting for them. She sat at the head of the table, a cup of coffee in her hand. Beside her was Ambassador Daniel Wright, the man who had walked out of the council chamber 3 months ago. On her other side sat Admiral Chris Lawson and several other human officials. Mary did not stand when the aliens entered. She simply gestured to the empty chairs. "Please, sit down." The aliens exchanged uncertain looks. They were used to long ceremonies, formal introductions, and elaborate displays of respect. This casual treatment felt like an insult. But they were not in a position to complain. They sat. Zoreth cleared his throat. "Secretary General, we have come to discuss the return of humanity to the Galactic Council. We are prepared to offer generous terms." Mary sipped her coffee. "I am listening. First, we will grant Earth full voting rights in the Council. Your voice will carry the same weight as any other species." Mary said nothing. Zoreth continued. "Second, we will remove all restrictions on human expansion. You may settle any unclaimed worlds you find." Still nothing. "Third, we will give humanity a permanent seat on the High Council. Your leaders will help make decisions that affect the entire galaxy." Mary set down her coffee cup. "No." The aliens stared at her in shock. "No?" Zoreth repeated. "But these are extraordinary terms. No young species has ever been offered so much. And yet, it is not enough." Mary leaned forward, her eyes hard. "For 300 years, humanity served the galaxy. We built your ships, healed your sick, and fed your hungry. We asked only for respect, and you gave us contempt. Now you come here offering us scraps from your table, and you expect us to be grateful?" Crystal Voice spoke up, her voice like wind chimes in a storm. "We are sorry for how you were treated. Truly. But the galaxy is dying. Millions are suffering. Surely you cannot let innocent beings perish because of your anger." Mary turned to face the Sindari ambassador. "You called us a disease, Crystal Voice. You said humans should be wiped out for the good of the galaxy. Do you remember that?" The ambassador's glow dimmed even further. "I was wrong. I see that now. Yes. You were wrong. You were all wrong. Mary stood up and walked to the window. But I am not refusing to help because I am angry. I am refusing because your offer does not solve the problem. Even if we return to the council, even if we get voting rights and a seat at the high table, nothing will really change. The council is built on the idea that some species are better than others. As long as that idea exists, there will always be another Earth, another young species treated like servants. Zorath frowned. What are you suggesting? Mary turned back to face them. The Galactic Council must be dissolved. The room erupted in protests. The Crick's representative clicked his mandibles in outrage. The Morvathi elder made a sound of deep distress. Even Crystal Voice, who had been so apologetic, looked horrified. You cannot be serious, Zorath said. The Council has existed for 3,000 years. It is the foundation of galactic civilization. Then it is time for a new foundation. Mary returned to her seat and pulled out a document. We propose the creation of a new galactic federation. It will be based on a constitution written by humans, with input from all species. Every member will have equal rights and equal responsibilities. There will be no special privileges for old species, and no limits on young ones. She slid the document across the table. Earth will serve as the administrative center of the new federation. We will manage the critical systems that keep the galaxy running. But we will not rule. We will serve, as we have always served. The difference is that this time, we will be respected for it. Zorath picked up the document and read through it slowly. The other aliens crowded around him, reading over his shoulders. What they saw shocked them. The Constitution was fair. It protected the rights of all species, large and small. It created systems for resolving disputes peacefully. It set up economic rules that prevented any one group from gaining too much power. It was, in many ways, better than anything the old council had ever produced. You wrote this? Zorath asked, his voice filled with wonder. We have had 300 years to think about it, Daniel said. It was the first time he had spoken since the meeting began. Every human who served in the galaxy saw what was wrong with the old system. We shared our ideas, debated solutions, and dreamed of a better way. This document is the result. Crystal Voice picked up a copy and studied it carefully. This would make all species truly equal. The Morvathi would have the same rights as the youngest spacefaring race. That is the point, Mary said. No one should be treated as lesser because of how old their civilization is. We judge individuals by their actions, not their age. Why should species be any different? The Morvathi elder, who had been silent throughout the discussion, finally spoke. This is wise. Wiser than anything we ancient ones have proposed in 1,000,000 years. I am ashamed that it took a crisis to open our eyes. He turned to Zorath. I support this proposal. The Morvathi will join the new federation. Crystal Voice nodded slowly. The Sindari will join as well. We have learned a hard lesson about the cost of pride. One by one, the other representatives agreed. The Cricks were the last to decide, but even they eventually gave in. Their people were dying. They had no choice. Finally, only Zorath remained. He was the High Chancellor of the Velaran Empire, the most powerful being in the galaxy. Agreeing to this proposal meant admitting that everything he had believed was wrong. It meant giving up the special position that Valorans had enjoyed for thousands of years. But it also meant saving his people. Very well, he said at last. The Valoran Empire will join the Galactic Federation. We accept Earth's leadership. Mary nodded. Thank you, Chancellor. You have made the right choice. She stood and extended her hand. Zorath looked at it for a moment, then reached out with one of his forearms and shook it. It was a human custom, but somehow it felt right. What happens now? He asked. Now we get to work, Mary said. There are systems to fix, people to feed, and wounds to heal. It will take years to undo the damage. But if we work together, truly together, we can build something better than anything that came before. She looked around the room at the assembled aliens. The old galaxy was built on fear and pride. The new one will be built on cooperation and respect. That is the human way. And from now on, it will be the galactic way. Daniel walked to the window and looked out at the falling snow. In a few months, the trees would bloom again. The cold would give way to warmth. Winter would become spring. And the galaxy, which had fallen so far, would begin to rise again. Under human guidance, under human care, under a flag of true equality that flew for all beings, everywhere. The negotiation was over. The real work was just beginning. 1 year had passed since the signing of the Geneva Accords. The old Galactic Council was gone, replaced by the Galactic Federation, and the galaxy, which had nearly fallen into darkness, was slowly coming back to life. Admiral Chris Lawson stood on the bridge of the carrier Liberty, the flagship of Earth's space fleet. Through the great windows, he could see a convoy of ships moving through the stars. Some were human vessels. Others belonged to alien species. Together, they carried food, medicine, and supplies to worlds that were still recovering from the crisis. "Admiral, we are approaching Valoran space," reported Lieutenant Kate Morrison from her station. "Their orbital stations are requesting permission to join the convoy." Chris nodded. "Permission granted. Tell them they are welcome." A year ago, he never would have imagined working alongside Valorans. They had been the most arrogant species in the galaxy, looking down on humans like they were insects. But the crisis had changed them. It had changed everyone. The convoy passed through Valoran territory without incident. On the planet below, Chris could see the silver cities that had once been symbols of alien pride. Now, they were symbols of something else. Recovery, cooperation, hope. Back on Earth, Secretary General Mary Sullivan was addressing the first anniversary session of the Galactic Federation. Representatives from over 100 species filled the Great Assembly Hall in Geneva. Unlike the old council chamber, this hall had no special sections. Everyone sat together, equal, under the new constitution. 1 year ago, Mary began. The galaxy faced its darkest hour. Systems failed. People suffered. Ancient civilizations that had stood for thousands of years teetered on the edge of collapse, and at the center of it all was a simple truth that no one wanted to admit. We needed each other. She paused and looked around the hall. For too long, the galaxy was divided into old and young, powerful and weak, worthy and unworthy. Species that had traveled the stars for millennia looked down on those who were just beginning their journey. They believed that age made them superior, that history gave them the right to rule. Mary shook her head slowly. They were wrong. Age does not make you wise. History does not make you just. The only thing that matters is what you do, how you treat others, and whether you are willing to learn from your mistakes. She gestured to the assembly around her. Look at this hall. 1 year ago, many of you saw humans as servants at best, threats at worst. You limited our growth, denied our requests, and told us we would never be your equals. But when the crisis came, when everything you had built was falling apart, it was humans who held out their hands. Not to conquer, not to punish, but to help. End quote. Amendevu Talpan. End quote. Crystal Voice, the Sindari ambassador, rose from her seat. Her crystal body glowed brightly again, restored by the medicine that human doctors had brought to her world. The Secretary General speaks the truth, she said. My people were dying when the humans came. We had called them a disease. We had wished for their destruction. And yet, they saved us anyway. They healed our sick, fed our hungry, and asked for nothing but the chance to be treated fairly. She turned to face the human delegation. We do not deserve your kindness, but we are grateful for it, and we swear, on the memory of all who suffered, that we will never forget the lesson we have learned. Similar testimonies came from other delegates. The Krik's representative, whose queen had nearly lost her throne during the crisis, spoke of how human doctors had worked around the clock to produce the medicine his people needed. The Morvathi elder described how young human engineers had traveled to his ancient world and repaired systems that his own people had forgotten how to maintain. Story after story filled the hall. Tales of humans going beyond what was required, doing more than was expected, and showing kindness to those who had never shown kindness to them. When the testimonies were finished, Mary returned to the podium. We did not do these things for praise or reward. We did them because they were right. Because every being in this galaxy, regardless of their age or history or the shape of their body, deserves a chance to live and grow and thrive. She straightened her back and spoke the words that would be remembered for generations. Humanity came to the stars hoping to find wisdom and friendship. Instead, we found arrogance and scorn. But in the end, the universe taught us the most important lesson of all. Those who underestimate humanity do so at their own peril. Not because we are stronger or smarter or more advanced, but because we refuse to give up. We refuse to accept that we are less than anyone else, and we refuse to let the darkness win. The hall erupted in applause. Aliens and humans stood together, clapping and cheering and making sounds of approval in 100 different languages. For the first time in the history of the galaxy, there was true unity, true equality, true hope. Outside the assembly hall, Daniel Wright stood in the garden, watching the sunset over the mountains. He had served as Federation ambassador for the past year, traveling to dozens of worlds and helping to rebuild what the crisis had destroyed. It had been the hardest work of his life, but also the most rewarding. A young Valoran named Tarek approached him. They had met during the recovery efforts and had become unlikely friends. Tarek had grown up believing that humans were inferior beings. The crisis had shown him how wrong he was. The Secretary General speaks well, Tarek said, standing beside Daniel. She speaks the truth, Daniel replied. That is all. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the colors change in the sky. Do you hate us? Tarek asked quietly. For how we treated you. Daniel considered the question. A year ago, he might have said yes. He had spent so many years swallowing his pride, accepting insults, and pretending that the contempt did not hurt. Part of him had wanted the aliens to suffer. Part of him had enjoyed watching their worlds fall apart. But that part was smaller now. The work of the past year had changed him. Healing others had healed something in himself. No, he said finally. Hate would mean I still cared about the past. But the past is over. What matters now is the future we build together. Tarek nodded slowly. You are a wiser species than we gave you credit for. Daniel smiled. We are a stubborn species. There is a difference. They both laughed, and the sound carried across the garden like a promise. Far away, on the edge of known space, a human exploration ship was making first contact with a new species. They were small, timid creatures who had only recently learned to travel between stars. They looked up at the human visitors with fear and wonder, not knowing what to expect. Captain Lisa Park stepped off her ship and raised her hand in greeting. Do not be afraid, she said gently. We are humans. We come from a planet called Earth, and we would like to be your friends. The small creatures looked at each other. Then back at the tall, strange beings who had descended from the sky. One of them, braver than the rest, stepped forward. Friends? It asked in a high, thin voice. Lisa smiled. Yes. Friends. Partners. Equals. We will share what we know and learn from what you teach us. We will grow together, help each other, and face the universe, side by side. She extended her hand, just as Mary Sullivan had done to High Chancellor Zoreth a year before. Welcome to the Galactic Federation. The small creature reached out and touched her hand with its tiny fingers. It did not fully understand what was happening, but it felt something it had never felt before. Safety, belonging, hope, and somewhere, in the vast darkness between stars, other civilizations were watching. They saw the human ships traveling through space, bringing aid to those in need. They heard the stories of how a young species had risen from contempt to leadership in just 3 centuries. They studied the constitution of the new Federation and wondered if they, too, might find a place within it. The universe was changing. The old order was gone, replaced by something new, something better, something built not on pride and power, but on respect and cooperation. And at the center of it all stood humanity, once mocked, once scorned, once dismissed as primitive children playing among the stars. Now the guides and guardians of a new age. Not rulers, but servants. Not conquerors, but healers. Not masters, but friends. This was the human way. And now, at last, it was the way of the galaxy. The story of Earth and the Galactic Council had ended, but the story of humanity among the stars was just beginning. And it would be a story worth telling for 1 billion years to come.